everyone, welcome back from lunch. I hope you're all feeling nourished. I'm really excited to introduce the second session of today. We have two incredible, I can't believe you're both here together in this space today. Akinola Davies and of course Julie Dash. In conversation with the equally brilliant Makella and Ketedzi. It gives me a particular kind of pride to witness Makella also be in conversation with Akinola Davies and Julie Dash. We met our new curators 2 years ago, and to be here at the Royal Academy in celebration of Kerry James Marshall is incredible. So looking forward to the talk.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to start by saying a massive thank you to Alia, Black Curatorial, the Getty team, Mark, and my sweet dear Nikita. Also, to the people who are with us in this room right now, both physically and spiritually. Yeah. Julie Dash and Akinola Davies have provided us with long, silky, soft winding threads. I'm going to try my very best to be a needle weaving through some of their work. And I'll be doing so with the knowledge that there is already so much more to say in so little time. But the beauty of threads is that they can be pulled and unraveled in perpetuity, so please do so even outside of here. Much like Daughters of the Dust, Praise House, and HOD, the format of this talk will be a little non-linear. I'm going to start off with a question, and then we'll watch a few excerpts from some of the films that these two incredible directors have made. And then I'm going to ask some questions, and this will happen 4 times. First, a short summary of the films that will be referred to today. Daughters of the Dust is a film by Julie Dash that follows a multi-generational Gullah family in 1902 as they gather for a final feast before some emigrate north. The film explores tensions between preserving their unique African-derived cultural traditions and embracing modernity. It's known for its lush, poetic visuals and its focus on female voices and perspectives, told in part through the narration of an unborn child. Praise House combines elements of theatre, dance, and music based on the rhythms and rituals of Africa. In the making of this, Julie Dash collaborated with Jaboli Willa Jozola, founder and choreographer of Urban Bushwomen, to explore the source of creativity and its effect on 3 generations of African-American women. Praise House shows the emotional prison so many live in, even as it celebrates the persistence of belief and creativity and the legacies of African Americans. HOD, an acronym for Heroes of Displacement, creates a narrative of reclamation through displaced African artifacts in Western Europe and the impacts their energies have had, both on the spaces they've been removed from, as well as the spaces they now inhabit. Dearly Departed is a short film by Akinola Davies Jr., which pays tribute to the future his mother never had, due to a colonial disposition that her white teachers had about Nigerian women needing to pursue a life of servitude to the nation. Can we please take a seat and join me? Okay, so to begin with, I'd like to pretend that we're not at the RA, because for many of us, the RA is not our ultimate centre. And I'm sure everyone's seen the pamphlets which have descriptions and biographies of both Julie Dash and Akinola Davies Jr. But I'd like to start by asking, if you were to describe yourself and what you do to a 7-year-old niece, nephew, or nibbling, what would you say?
Me first? Oh, this is, okay. That's actually easy. I would describe myself as a child who learned how to smuggle her daydreams into reality because I was very shy. Yeah.
That's beautiful, thank you.
Oh, wow, how do you follow that up? Well, firstly, I'd say I'm probably your uncle, so let's start there. And then I would probably say Yeah, something I was gonna say. Maybe I make believe, but actually thinking about it, I was like, I try and make believe actually, because I think there's probably a lot of agency in saying I wanna create images that we can see ourselves in and believe for sure.
That's beautiful, thank you. I'm going to start playing snippets from Daughters of the Dust and Dilly Departed. I always smile so much seeing the end of that. It's just so beautiful. I wanted to start by talking about dreams and dreaming. In Kerry's practice, the theme of dreams is explored in a multitude of ways. And yesterday, in Sandra's talk, she spoke so poignantly about Kerry's ability to encourage people to think. And I think he definitely does the same with dreaming as well. As viewers, we're encouraged to take time to be still with his paintings, gaze instead of scan, look up close and from afar, pull ourselves from the present and reach into our memories. In quite a few of his paintings, such as Knowledge and Wonder, 1955, this process is depicted so poignantly. Commissioned initially for Legler Library in Chicago, it's now been exhibited for the first time at the Royal Academy. We see inquisitive children and adults alike, many with arms crossed behind their back, gazing into what feels like an unknown future. And it's almost as though we're watching figures dreaming in their own worlds whilst we time travel through ours. Julie, in previous conversations, you've mentioned how the idea for Daughters of the Dust was a dream that had been sitting with you for quite a few years and growing before you eventually made the film. I'm curious to know what dreaming looked like for you in the lead up and how you allowed yourself to nurture these dreams.
Oh, yeah, that was part of the smuggling. Yeah. I pretty much dream all of my films before I make them. You know, I think about it, then I have to lay down and literally dream it and meditate on it. There were several iterations of ways I could tell this story, and one of them was I was going to do a feature-length film, a silent film, with title cards in between explaining, because I wanted it to be, very dreamlike. But then when we got a little bit of money from a funding source, they said, put a little dialogue in it. So we did. So I decided I was going to do it with Gullah dialogue totally throughout. When I met Kerry, through AJ, Arthur Jafer, in the late 1980s. And I was so nervous about, AJ was just like, you get my boy, Kerry, you got to work with him, this and that and the other, he's the bomb, blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, so Kerry came over to the house, and it was up to me to explain to him, to pitch the story to him, because we were going to try to get him to be a production designer on it. And I was afraid, because I said, he's going to think I'm crazy. He's not going to understand. I didn't know Kerry at all. And I thought he was going to just think I was nuts. So I started, and, he's very sore-turning. Yeah, okay. Yeah, though, that's fascinating. But then I guess, I don't know if it was that day but soon after, he said, yeah, but I've never production designed a film before. I said, that's not a problem. We'll tell you what we need, and you create the look, because we want it to be authentic and this and that and the other. Yeah, okay. And he's Libra like I am, kind of introverted. He doesn't give much at first. But he came back with so many ideas to choose from, that he just had like a wall of images and ideas and prompts and all of these things. And so he just took the script and broke it down and just came up with a look. I said, I want indigo to be the main palette, various colors of the blue indigo. And he just, there you go. So I know I'm talking too much, but anyway, he took it from there. And then he would come and present things to us. And then, AJ and I would be talking about, the framing, cinematography, and lighting, and this and that and the other. And then it was like a trio. We were a troika of collaboration to make this thing happen.
Can I, in that context, just how do you filter the ideas? Because there's you, AJ, and Kerry, or how was that process?
It actually went pretty smoothly. It was AJ who had some of the most audacious ideas about how to do something. He said he was going to, since we knew we couldn't bring lights into the setting, it was a film that was shot without artificial lights. Everything was sunlight. So he needed reflectors, and they were big and heavy. So he designed handheld reflectors that he could just put on next to someone's face, like Alva Rogers' face, and, bring the light in there. So that was radical. I'd never worked with handheld reflectors, And so he had a lot of great ideas, and we just all kind of massaged them. And, I was wondering, it was a big thing about the whole indigo pots, in the film, the clay pots, the indigo processing. We didn't have very much money, and we knew, like in Africa, they had they were dug into the ground, and we wanted to make it very authentic. Then Kerry came up with all the slew of ideas of how they did it in, Suriname and this and that and the other. So it was kind of diasporic indigo situation, plantation that he built. So everything was pretty much like that. And and he brought his team. His team was Michael Kelly Williams and Martha Jackson Jarvis to work with him. And they pretty much built and painted and created everything that we see,
Power of collective dreaming.
Yeah.
Akinola, I know HOD came out in 2018, and though it was one of your earlier films, it wasn't your first. I especially wanted to talk about dreaming to begin with, because in many ways I find it to be a form of ritual and manifestation. In his book, Dreaming in Africa, an Afrocentric Theory, Augustine Moyi speaks of how in the Afrocentric paradigm, the individual dreams not just for themselves, but also for those who came before and those who will come after. Dreaming is both a source and a portal. There are messages everywhere with eyes for people who have eyes to see, or as my friend Chloe Fulani would say, for people who have eyes to listen. I was really touched by the way the ideas of dreaming was explored by your mother in the film, and towards the end she leaves us with a Yoruba song, the words of which roughly translates to, "If you have 1,000 selves and you die, your child will take over because your child is your apparel, clothing." Basically meaning that your child will be your legacy. I'm curious about what dreaming also looks like for you personally, but also in relation to this film, and what was birthed through conversations with your mother whilst making Dilly Departed.
Oh, wow. Shouts to Chloe Fulani, first of all.
Shouts to Chloe.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's such an honor to be here with Julie Dash. I mean, I just can't believe I'm sat next to Julie Dash first. But what does dreaming look like to me? I guess dreaming is kind of like archiving for me. That's kind of how I see it. I think there's so much information. I watched Daughters of the Dust recently, and even what you talk about the indigo pits, there's indigo pits in northern Nigeria. There's so much detail that goes into that film, and I think, it's the idea of like seeing yourself and archiving yourself and giving yourself permission to. I can't remember who said it. There's an amazing artist who talks about carnival being like a black expression of imagination. It's like and for me, it's like seeing those things, creating them on an image is me giving myself permission to dream. And really, the film I made that's here was more a sort of conversation for like my future children or my future nieces and nephews, because I really revere and love my mother, and I sort of worry that they might not get to know her in the same capacity I know her. And so I've been recording our conversations, which she wasn't like super happy about, but I think once she knew I'd be recording stuff, she'd start performing, So I was like, okay, well, let's just make a film, you know, like, then you can really perform, you know. And but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of stuff is, you know, well, dreaming, the idea of it like comes back to, a little bit to access. Because, for example, had I seen Daughters of the Dust when I was younger, I might have started dreaming a lot earlier, you know. And I think the reason why I started dreaming in film is because I didn't see a lot of my community at the time reflected, and I think we shared a similar conversation earlier, and I sort of got a bit worried that, you know, if the young version of me today like looks at depictions of themselves, they might not see themselves depicted, because the idea of blackness is often portrayed between this really extreme lens or this really traumatic lens, and where is the sort of space for everything in the middle. So a lot of what I was, you know, I wasn't cognizant of it at the time, but a lot of what I was trying to do is like create images for my younger self, which I guess alludes to dreaming again. It's like I wanted to create pictures that my younger self would see and feel validated by, and feel humanized by, and wouldn't go through my late teens and early 20s in like different states of depression, because your mental health is images to sort of satisfy the idea of your mental health and stuff. But yeah, and I think I also have a lot of creative friends, some are in this room, that equally are dreamers, and I think it's just fascinating to hear that, you know, that was Kerry's first production film, that was AJ's first features, and just, you know, and you guys have just created a blazing legacy of work for all of us and so many people in this room. I'm quite excited for yeah, just see how my friends and all of us like manifest work moving forward as well.
You have to dream it into existence.
100%.
Thank you for giving us permission to. We're now going to watch snippets from Praise House, HOD, and another snippet from Daughters of the Dust. That was HOD, and we're going to continue with a snippet from Praise House.
Tell him that he production designed Praise House too.
Oh yeah, actually we're going to do that later.
Sorry.
Sitting, we're going to show Praise House later. Sitting with trees, groundings with brothers, groundings with sisters, groundings with grandparents, screaming, laughing and crying, screaming again. Naming ceremonies, speaking to ghosts in dreams, documenting the self and those around us, dancing, moving, singing the good gospel, singing the bad gospel, thanking the beautiful spirits around us. In the snippets we've just watched, everyday forms of ritual and spiritual practices are sprinkled throughout everyday life. Julie, you mentioned earlier that you met Kerry James Marshall through Arthur Jafer quite a while before the filming for Daughters began. And it's through a gradual building of friendship that he ended up being the set and production designer for the film and for Praise House as well. When walking through the show here at the RA, I noted that in the early 90s room, Kerry had a very specific focus on spirituality, and we can see that in his exploration of the Middle Passage. Here, there is a focused exploration on African spirituality as largely practiced by West Africans in paintings like Terra Incognita, 1992. We see a waiter dressed in colours representing the Ishu Orisha. Spirit of the crossroads and of changes, standing between an ocean liner and a compass. In Slow Dance, 1993, hidden beneath the embrace of a slow dancing couple, Kerry paints an ode to the spirit Ursule, a Haitian divinity personified by love and passion. In Eshu, Crossroads, 1987, Kerry paints the African powers onto carved pieces of wood, painted over oil paint monotype. Whilst doing research for this talk, I felt a little spark light up when I realised the similarities between the main protagonists of Daughters of the Dust and the seven African powers that be. The number 7, often reflected in Kerry's works, such as Voyager, 1992, is reflective of the 7 African powers, which is essentially a pantheon of Yoruba gods and deities: Yemaya, Oshun, Ogun, Elegba, Obatala, Shango, and Oya. In Daughters of the Dust, Nana Pezant is an embodiment of Nana Baluku, a supreme grandmother figure from the ancestral plane and revered by Don, Ewe, and African voodoo religions. Eula Pezant is an embodiment of Yamaya, the goddess of water. Oh, Oshun, my bad. Lucky to have you here. Goddess of water. Yellow Mary is the goddess of water, the ocean, and motherhood. Viola Pezant is an embodiment of the rift and tensions between African spirituality and Christianity. I'm really curious to know what it looked like to be in fellowship with Kerry and other people involved in the making of this film, either in front or behind the screen. I don't think it's possible to make something so spiritually charged without being in conversation about the spirit. How did the process of communion and convening look like and take place for you all?
Well, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, when I was first pitching the story to Kerry to see if he was interested in joining us on this journey in the Low Country and the Sea Islands with AJ and myself, I was very nervous because I had given each character the name, they personified a certain deity, and, everything about them was the colors, the astrological sign, the way they spoke, their dilemmas that they had to get over, their dramatic arc. Everything had to do with either Oshun or Yemoya or Ogun, who is Eli. So I was hesitant because I didn't know how Kerry would react. I said I thought he might think I was nuts, but he just. He just would listen, and then he would come back with brilliant ideas. That, with Nana Pezant, she should be outside more in that chair. We'll build something. And for Yellow Mary, we're going to build something because I had them on a flat raft, and he said, no, you need to have this kind of canoe boat, and they built that, and they built the sticks that pulled them along, and with Eli representing Ogun as a blacksmith, they built the shed, and then they built the green trees around them, and then because I had the bottle trees in there, he said, bottle trees, and he came back and he built a bottle tree. I mean, it was wonderful because I could share my dreams, by the things that I always held back from people because, certain people, because they would just, everybody's, pragmatic, and they don't think in that way, and they don't think in that nonlinear way, and they don't weave stories and all of this. And so it was delightful to work with him. And Cheryl, his wife, played the part of Viola, the one that had to struggle with, Christianity and ancestor fellowship. That was his wife.
Yesterday when we were speaking briefly, you mentioned the resource that you made for everyone. That was kind of like a Bible.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit about that as well?
Yes, thank you. Because Daughters of the Dust is very specific African American history. It involves the descendants of the African captives who live among the sea islands of the South and in the Low Country, the coastal Atlantic. And most people don't know much about them, now they do, but 35 years ago, they did not. Most people did not know. And so I created what I called my Bible. Each character, I had, a whole chapter on each character and a chapter on the Low Country and the traditions and all of these things, and everyone got a bit. And then I brought in Ron Days, who was working on a project translating the Bible into Gullah Geechee, and he was their vocal coach, dialogue coach, and he translated my script into Gullah Geechee phonetically for them to speak it. Because most of my actors came from either New York or Los Angeles, and it was my decision. I wanted to work with, you may recognize them from other films, I want to work with actors who worked with the LA Rebellion film and the Independence in New York, like Charles Lane, worked with Trula Hoosier, and she's Trula in this film. So, and you, I keep getting the real names mixed up with the character name. So the Eula character, she worked with Spike Lee, and Mr. Sneed worked with Spike Lee on She's Gotta Have It, and so, yeah. So everyone came from Black independent cinema. Yeah.
Well, just out of my curiosity, what was everybody's initial reaction to the work, like the actors? You said you were a bit worried to show Kerry the work initially, but what about recruiting actors? Because for me, I guess what was striking in the film was Kerry's wife's character, the sort of tension between this idea of like Christianity and this like depart from something more traditional, more grounding. So I guess did that come up in conversation when you were casting?
She loved it. She likes to go hot really fast, and she loved the idea of this kind of missionary type woman who, you know, representing Jesus, who's gonna be bringing a man of science, this light-skinned man of science, kind of like the Philadelphia Negro. She's gonna bring him down, take pictures of these people, her people, because, you know, this is something. Then together they're gonna cure these backwater Geechees, you know, with the science, technology, and with Jesus. Yeah.
And then the sort of, in response to the film, did you get any sort of pushback or on stuff like that? Because I guess for me, I'm really curious because like I wear Oshu on my ring here. The first time I went to Cuba, this is going to be a bit of a side quest, so follow me. But the first time I went to Cuba, I was really surprised because 70% of the island Santeria, which is like a derivative of Ifa, you know, and I just like, that was literally the first time I had come in contact with so many like Orishas or like a lot of deities, because in Nigeria where I grew up, it was considered like, you don't talk about this stuff. It had a lot of negative connotations. And then I guess becoming older and being more curious about it, it always seems that there's like even though Santeria and Candomblé in Brazil have a mixture of like, you know, Yoruba spirituality and then mixed with Catholicism, even still in Nigeria, it's still quite a contemptuous topic. So I guess what was the conversation in like African Americans when your film came out?
Well, it's interesting. In the Sea Islands, the locals didn't necessarily want to hear people who were non-local speak with the Gullah Geechee accent because their teachers had told them that it was ignorant. And so even the little girl who was playing the unborn child, she couldn't do the narration because she refused to speak out loud. So I had another little girl do the narration. So there was that dilemma going on down there. I was born and raised in New York City. Interestingly enough, Santeria was there. We heard the call of the Muslim call at 5 a.m. every morning. I grew up in the Queensbridge projects in New York City. All of that was there. All of that was in the Cuban, Chinese Cuban restaurants. That, you know, that they don't have them anymore out, you know, but they were great. We were talking about that the other day, missing the Chinese Cuban restaurants. All of that was in New York. It was still flourishing and very much alive in the 70s. But when we got down to the Sea Islands, the local actors who we hired were kind of like skeptical, like, you know, whatever, what we were doing, because they had been trained not to embrace that kind of ancestor fellowship, even though they did it in their praise house every weekend, you know. So yeah, that was going on. There's a lot of suppression, especially when it has to do with religion. You know, anything that's not like straight up Baptist Christianity or Catholicism, it's considered, you know, something evil or something, you know, malevolent, when it's really not. It's really, you know.
On a similar note, Akinola, Heroes of Displacement addresses the impact of colonialism, cultural looting, and the reclamation of African identity in history. In the past, you've mentioned that Kerry James Marshall and the way he creates his own mythology and agency when exploring Black spirituality is something that inspired you in the making of HOD. When unpacking concepts such as colonialism, a phenomena with spillage so large that it's still drenching and flooding our everyday lives, like here, outside of here, I'd love to know whether the themes and these kind of topics were conversations that you were also having with cast members and the team in general, and if so, what those kind of conversations looked like.
Thank you. I would say Kerry James Marshall and AJ quite big influences on the ability to sort of allow myself to take myself out of this kind of my socialization, this idea of like, oh, this is who you are, and actually just look back. You said something earlier about Kerry's work making you think, like the new works that he created. I think it's quite a provocative room, actually, in a way, the way that it makes you think of like the complicity in what happened like back in the day, and also just the nuances of how a lot of those things are set up. But yeah, I mean, HOD was sort of my attempt at trying to create a mythology. I think I'd heard Kerry talk about Rhythm Master and him saying it's really important for the diaspora to keep adding to mythology and creating their own mythology from their own ideas. So it was kind of in collaboration with like a lot of people in fashion and dancers and artists within their own right. And it was this idea of the energy, and then AJ had said something also about the fact that when a lot of African art was extracted, that when it came into contact with artists in Europe, it was just like, what is this stuff, you know? Because it's emitting a lot of energy, and the places it was from, they're not kept behind glass. They're actually, people touch them and people respond to them, and then when you remove that energy from a community and you transfer it somewhere else, there's a big sort of rupture happening both ways, basically, where you keep the art and where the art's sort of left. And I also just thought, just in the idea of that, it was quite a violent exercise, regardless how the art was, how the works were acquired and where they're taken to, and how they're kept as well. So I guess HOD was this kind of what happens if the deities that represent a lot of these characters or these ideas come back and they find themselves in London, because that's where a lot of the work is, you know, and they just find themselves in really alien space and having to go and sort of reclaim it back. But yeah, I mean, in terms of conversation, these are things that I think of a lot of the time. It's funny hearing Julie Dash say that she was nervous of speaking to AJ about some of these ideas, because I think I still have quite similar, you know, I call it subversive, because I'm not trying to talk like, I know how much maybe in a sense like religion plays in the life of Black people, and how, to me anyways, and with a great respect, a lot of it is the same thing but maybe marketed in a different way. And I think that being an African, even though there was a lot of negative dogma attached to stuff, the older I get, the more sense a lot of Ifa and a lot of those like traditional practices make to me anyway. So yeah, in the makings of the work, it's definitely a lot of conversations that I have with collaborators. I think it's also a sensitive subject, so at the same time, I'm not trying to force anything on anyone. It's just things I'm curious about, because the aspects of what I said before, similarly, is that I'm just interested in archiving. So how do you create something that maybe encourages people to look back in their own family tree, in their own lineage of like what certain signs and meanings, you know. The other amazing artist I've heard about talk about dreams is Jen Nkuru. She's an incredible artist, and she says she always dreams her work. I'm quite jealous because I don't, or my dreams just have Rihanna in them all the time or whatever. But there's just so much meaning within the dreams. There's such a language. You know, you quote Chloe Fulani, and there's so much happening around us all the time. There's so many like there's so much learning and information happening around us all the time that the body doesn't even take into account. A lot of people are just like, oh, it's just coincidence or something strange happened. And I'm like, it's not strange, actually. It was a bit of information communicated to you, however you choose to reference this. So yeah, I'm trying to be a lot more submissive to like learning things and hearing things that maybe don't have a quote unquote logical or academic like grounding or whatever, because I think to me sort of medicine and information are just things you can't quantify in a way. You have to feel and live it, and so much of it is within memory and dreams, and yeah.
Are you creating space to actually like intentionally think about it? Because I guess for me, like right now I'm going through a journey where I'm trying to pause and actually try to interpret the dreams and the messages around me. And I think sometimes when you embark on a creative endeavor with like friends or collaborators generally, you do the thing and then it's only like a week, a month, a year, 5 years later that you're like, oh my goodness, there were all these messages, all these signs around me, and I didn't like pause to take it in. So I'm like really interested in what collective fellowship looks like when you're working with other people, and whether it's a thing that you sit down and actively discuss or you just do.
Oh wow, yeah, amazing question. It's funny. We just went to a lunch a few minutes ago, and a really incredible artist, I think her name was Nana, and she said there she is. She just introduced me to someone, and the way she introduced me to this person kind of took me aback a little bit, because she said I did this thing in Somerset House a few months ago where, and I'm going to paraphrase what she said, but she said, she did say I was attractive, but anyway, she also... She also said she said that it was an event that had people from like different generations there, all in communion together, and there was like an artist who was just like an everyday girl who was talking in the balcony, who was in the middle of everyone, and there's these incredible artists on stage, and it's so funny hearing someone say this back to me, because I was there, like obviously in the back, like directing and whatever. But so when you talk about communion, I'm like, oh, I guess that was communion. Actually, that was the intention, was to bring community together to celebrate the sort of mundanity within our lives, and actually Black life outside of London. But actually, so many people in London have said to me they felt very proud to be a Londoner that day. So I'm like, oh, it's ironic. Pretty much none of what we shot was in London, but everyone there recognized themselves within what we shot. So I guess maybe in the work, yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have like an altar at home. I'm definitely like a lot more conscious of like trying to have sort of be a conduit for my community spiritually, as well as sort of whatever else. But yeah, I would like to hear Julie answer that question actually, because I just wonder how that continues to whether that continues to be like central in your work, or whether that was just.
Well, I just want to say, when I saw your opening piece with your mother, and you talk about, I actually went on a dream. It took me like it was mesmerizing, and I kind of lost track of time watching that. And it was like, yeah, it's another way of going into the dream space. It was very pleasant, And so thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Very relaxing.
It's funny, this is another side quest, so bear with me. It's funny, I read a lot of letterbox reviews for my feature film, and I actually quite find the negative ones really funny, because I'm like, you still took the time to write a thing, so you liked it. But a lot of people say, I fell asleep in the film, it was a good nap. And I was like, you know what, that's actually really good, because my driving instructor said to me, if people can fall asleep when you're driving, they feel very safe in your company. Mm-hmm. And actually, I'm like, okay, well, at least you felt safe enough to dream in the cinema when we made.
In 1992, when Daughters of the Dust came out, there was some woman who wrote in the newspaper that she fell asleep watching Daughters of the Dust, but when she woke up, she felt really good.
Oh wow!
There you go. There you go. And also so interesting that you mentioned that anecdote with Auntie Nana. That's Auntie Nana to me. Because many moons ago, it was a couple of months, I told her the same thing. We were just walking and I was like, you're a spirit. And I think one of the really sad things about capitalism, which is infused into absolutely everything, is that it doesn't allow us space to interpret our dreams. Like, we become so bogged down by the need to be productive and give that by the time we get home, we don't even have energy to think about what it is that we want for ourselves and what it is that we are doing for ourselves as well. So whenever I find the time to talk about dreams, I'm going to talk about dreams. So we're going to watch some more film excerpts. I hope this is like a nice sensory break for you guys as well. That was HOD. Time has done its thing and run entirely too rapidly. So we're just going to go to the last part of this segment and then open up for audience Q&As. I'd quite like to end these questions by returning back to set design and the colour indigo, as you mentioned earlier. In Daughters of the Dust, towards the end of the film, we hear the line, "Where we're headed, there'll be no need for trees covered in glass jars." In Gullah tradition, doors, windows, church, porch ceilings, and trees made out of bottles are often painted blue to honour ancestors and ward off evil spirits. The colour blue here is used because Indigofera trinctoria, the dye, was one of the byproducts of the enforced enslavement of Western Central Africans, ancestors of the Gullah people on coastal plantations. At the time, indigo tinctoria was known as blue gold. As production and set designer, Kerry James Marshall would engage in the same practice, the painting of blue around the set, the assembling of bottles on trees. In the latter half of the film, Hagar Pizant states, "Where we're headed, there'll be no need for trees covered in glass jars." When I first heard this line, I actually smiled because I was thinking about how metaphorically and temporally there are blue-tinted glass trees everywhere, whether we see them or not. It's why we're here and it's why I'm here today. This Kerry James Marshall show is the first time a black artist is exhibiting a solo show in the main galleries of the Royal Academy. I don't want to make this a conversation about how it feels to be the first black anything, because I do think that question is a bit redundant sometimes. Instead, what I would like to know from both of you is who are or were the Nana Pizants in your life? How are you honouring them now? And how can we honour those that came before us without censoring whiteness?
Damn.
The Nana Pizants, and I would say that was Miss Kathleen Collins Prettyman, who is a filmmaker who came before me, and she did several feature films and short films, and she was just tremendous, and she passed away much too young. And Zora Neale Hurston, who was the first female documentary filmmaker, black filmmaker, making documentaries in the turpentine plantations in the same Florida. Yeah. So I don't go back as far as Nana. There were Nanas before me.
Yeah. Equally, I think. A lot of things start and end with my mum. To be honest, I'm quite obsessed with her. Who else would I say? My sister, for sure. I think my sister holds a lot of energy and space, and it took me a long while to acknowledge that. But it's a tough one, huh? You don't want to leave anyone out. Yeah. I would probably start with those two. But then I thought of a few people watching that film I made that I thought of. Betty Saar, when I saw Betty Saar's work, I was like, oh, okay, she seems like kindred, like a lot of the stuff that she was making. I thought of again, watching the videos of Ming Smith, like this idea of using blur to have like a dual conversation between the subject and the object, and how her work use of blur makes her photographs look really magical. And then I'd probably also say within that trifecta is probably Faith Ringgold, with how she told stories, and it was sort of very communal within her stories, and loads of color and stuff like that. I mean, I probably wouldn't say I was like super cognizant of those three like early on. They're probably more in the last decade or something. But yeah, then I'd also flip it and just say my brother Wale is probably quite a Nana Pazant character, because he's constantly been there at very crucial periods of my life to be either encouraging or vice versa, basically. So and then lastly, yeah, my maternal and paternal grandmothers, I would say for sure. I didn't know either of them super well, but one of them was really stoic. My mum's mum was really stoic. She wouldn't speak to me unless I spoke Yoruba. And I hated it at the time, and I was really scared of her. But now I actually really appreciate it, because I understand the intention behind it. And then my dad's mum, Doris, who unfortunately had quite severe dementia by the time we met. But even within that dementia, I think there was just a lot of, for someone who lived quite a pained life, she was like very funny. But yeah, I'd probably stop there.
Thank you, and shout out to the Nana Pazants, and thank you to both Julie Dash and Akinola Davies. Okay, gorgeous. So we have 20 minutes for questions. I'm going to take my glasses off. She's quick. Okay, one over there. Can someone?
So first of all, Laro Yeshu, thank you so much for this conversation. I know that will only broaden my dreams even further. So my question needs a quick context, but then I'll add. So I wanted to quote the words of indigenous shaman Davies, and in his book, his words, he says, "White people don't know how to dream. They sleep a lot, but they don't dream often." And to that, he contends that white people's passions for material possessions permeates even their dreams, resulting in a limited scope of dream content centered around cars, houses, money, tangible things. So in contrast with this white world that he talks about, and with this relationship that we build with ancestral knowledge, perhaps this kind of neo-ancestral dreams and such, how do you think we can teach younger generations to dream again in a world where we are creating artificial intelligence to dream for us?
I don't really think artificial intelligence is dreaming for you. I think artificial intelligence is a tool that you could use to further your dreams, especially in filmmaking. Because like if I wanted to have a cast of thousands, I can't pay for them, but I could definitely code them up and paint them in CGI. And I could do historical things, and I could do more. So I would not run from something that is not going away. I would embrace it and take control of it and use it as a tool. And yes, it can, you could have deep fakes and all of those things, but you can't turn your back on something that's here. You have to deal with it,
How do you follow that up? I guess I would probably say it's something to do with like the policing of kids' imaginations, maybe. I think, I have three beautiful nephews and a very beautiful niece, and I think there's maybe a presence in which my siblings offer my nieces and nephews that my mum probably wasn't afforded to give me with sort of time. So it's just seeing my siblings encourage their sort of, I see my nieces and nephews and I'm like, if they were in Nigeria, they get smacked, But I see them now, and there's a certain level of like freedom and encouragement in the sort of behavior, and a dealing with them is a lot more communicative and a lot more patient. And I think maybe that's permissible to allowing them to dream a little bit more and not feel like they have to, like adhere to like some sort of, shrinking of themselves, maybe.
Hi.
Auntie.
Hello. My name's Abundance, and when I was listening to Akin at the beginning say that he can't believe he's sat next to Julie Dash, I just thought, I'm so proud of him, and it feels like a dream coming true. And then as he was talking, that phrase is going through my head, like, what is it for a dream to come true? And as artists, but like also just as people, family members, like, what do you think it is the cost of not following your dreams? And like, do you feel like it's a responsibility? And also, is a dream like a form of truth anyway? Like, are they even separate things? Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Great question.
The raisin in the sun. That's what immediately I was thinking of Langston Hughes' poem about a dream deferred. Do you live it or dry up like a raisin in the sun? I don't mean to be, you have to be free enough, and you have to have the autonomy and agency to explore your dreams. It doesn't mean that your dreams will be fruitful or whatever, but I think that, we have to encourage people to dream,
Yeah, completely. I mean, maybe I would just add a little bit to, I think the ability to allow myself to dream goes hand in hand with a lot of decolonization, I would maybe say, because I think I have to unlearn the spirituality, like dogma put upon me through like, going to church, whatever, and then I have to learn what the institutional dogma has put upon me from going to sort of schools or whatever. And I think, I just say that decolonization plays a big part in giving yourself permission to just be. And then when you can just be, you can just dream a little bit. It sounds easier than that, but it's way harder.
And you kind of have to be courageous to dream. And sometimes you can't share your dreams with everyone. You just have to go ahead and go forward with them, but you can't share them because they're like cut you down.
There's a question in the middle there.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for this very insightful conversation. I had a question about sound and music, which I noticed was very present in both of your works and Arthur Jafa's as well. I wanted to know where you would place music in terms of dreaming and entering different realms, and also in terms of your work and the different thematics that you spoke on, whether it's intergenerational learning, ancestry, cross-cultural dialogues, where you would place music and sound in its different functions within that.
I think you pretty much said it all. Yes, music is very important to us, and particularly, specifically with Daughters of the Dust. We hired John Bonds, and I sat with him, and he created something called New World Sound. So he was combining instruments from, Iranian satur, Pakistani drums, all of these different things that perhaps African captives during the Middle Passage heard and then embellished upon, including with the drumming. Music, of course, is always very important in anything and everything that we do. But you want to try to find ways of reinventing the standard musical diegetic sound and non-diegetic sound in your work. That I try to.
Yeah, what would I say? I guess, yeah, equally music is super important. I think I maybe said before that I think music helps to sort of crystallize emotion in a way. I think I'm also maybe started off with music, but I'm equally more interested in sound design now, because I think sound design maybe deals with a lot more the kind of unseen, unspoken a little bit. It has the ability to unlock things below the surface, and I think music maybe plays more on the surface in a way. And I think when you're trying to create something that's a lot more visceral, I think sound design maybe is a better means to get there. But I also think music is really important, because I think music can be the sort of like the watering hole, the place where there's a lot of familiarity, there's a lot of safety, and then it brings people to the well, and then you can start to pump more subversive ideas out into the world, basically. But I think ultimately, you know, it's a language as well. Like, it's always been the drums, you know, different instruments have always been tools of like griots and stuff like that. And I think actually, I was reading the credits of Daughters of the Dust, and there is a lot of music from different areas and different.
You have talking drums in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So I think there's it's always the intention, you know, like it's always the intention to try and trigger something in the subconscious to allow people to see themselves. I guess maybe that's what music is.
I think your inclusion of songs sung by the children was also a really beautiful reminder of the power of call and response as well, and how music and sound through like folk songs it's also a form of I guess like games, passing forward.
Well, we John Barnes, we created each person had their own aria, so to speak. You know, Nana Pazant had hers, and Yellow Mary, who was Yemaya, had her aria, and the same thing with Eula Pazant. And so whenever you see them, you hear the aria, you hear their music, their theme song. Yeah.
Oh, that's a question just
there. I just had a quick question about collaboration and community, which I know you've spoken a little bit about, but it's so powerful to hear you talk about collaboration with Kerry James Marshall and others, of course. And I wonder how do you think of collaboration differently now than you did then? And maybe you can speak, Julie, specifically about the LA uprising and how you view that now. You know, that sense of coming from a place in a moment, having been parts of...
Do you mean the LA Rebellion?
Rebellion, sorry. My bad. Uprising too? I don't know. Yes. Sorry, forgive me. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Collaboration is a wonderful thing. It helps to strengthen your resolve, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes your collaborators are not in agreement with you, and you have to be, you have to be courageous and say, okay, this is the way you think, this is the way I think, I'm going to do it anyway, my way. I'm just going to see what happens. But collaboration is a wonderful thing. And that's pretty much why I wanted to, in Daughters of the Dust, I wanted to work with the actors who collaborated on other independent black films, and so they know what that kind of fellowship means and what they ought to do. But this time I was paying them, so this was a wonderful thing. Yes. I've done, many collaborations with the Urban Bush Women. Just recently with opera singer Devon Times, we did a collaborative effort to honor the Emmanuel 9. Those are the 9 members of the Mother Emanuel Church who were killed by Dylann Roof while they were inside the church. So collaborations are great. I actually collaborated with Jenny Kuru in her company, Umachroma. She has a company with AJ and Bradford Young, and it's called Umachroma. And we did a film called Seeking, Mapping Our Gullah Geechee Culture. We did that a couple of years ago. So I got to meet Jen. She's wonderful, and she's so talented. Yeah. Absolutely. So, Yay, collaboration. Yes.
I think we have time for 2 or 3 more questions. Just over there.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Thank you for your talks. Hey, Makella. It's really interesting having this conversation within the context of, obviously, Kerry's beautiful work. And the thing that struck me in his show is how character-led and rooted those people in those frames are. And I'm really intrigued, as incredible directors, how you connect with your characters before putting pen to paper. My mentor once said to listen to your characters. So I'm wondering, what are some of the poignant things that your characters have said to you? Yeah.
That's a great question. I wrote Daughters of the Dust over a period more than 10 years, and one of the characters, the unborn child, spoke to me when I had my daughter in Zinga, and I wrote her into Daughters of the Dust, but in earlier versions of the screenplay, there was no unborn child until I had a child, and then I understood more about life, and where they come from, and they have been here before. So yes, they do speak to you.
My anecdote might not make sense because not many people have seen my actual film, but I think I'm at my infancy in terms of working in film, I would probably say, but I think there's a lot to be said for collaboration as well in terms of because everything is a dialogue, right? Like as progressive or as whatever as I could think, I have a lot of blind sides, and I think the ability to, what I find as in the director sort of job is like trying to take consensus and trying to filter out what you think works, and sometimes I'm wrong, probably quite a lot of the time, even though I struggle to admit it. But a lot of the time I'm probably wrong, and I think. At times, you just have to be very present in the moment and listen. So my anecdote is this: we were doing a table read for my film, and we're working with loads of Nigerian actors, work in Nollywood all the time. And after we did the table read, this character who plays an old man comes up to us after, and he says, "I really enjoyed that, but I think my character needs to sing a song." And I was like, oh, goodness, here we go. And I said, okay, what's the song? He was like, I'll sing it for you. And he sang this song. And 2 of my producers started crying after he sang it. So I was like, yeah, we're putting the song in, It turns out that he's the younger brother of the Ligidu sisters. And the song they wrote, the twins, the Ligidu sisters, they wrote it for each other. And when I think it was Cane Day passed, the song took on a completely different meaning. So he explained that to us. So I had to write a letter to Taiwo Ligidu to ask for her permission to use the song, explaining the context of my film and the context we would use the song. And the guy from Luca Bop, the label, read the letter to her and wrote back to me and said that she cried listening to my letter. And subsequently, I ended up meeting her, and she was like, oh, you're my son, like, I know you. So I think, again, had I not been cognizant of humbling myself, submitting myself to the process of, like, listening to this incredible actor who's lived so many lives ahead of me, then I might not have had that experience. And I think, yeah, I sort of, similar to what Julie says, I'll try my way, I'll try someone's way, and we'll see what the best version is. But ultimately, the best idea wins, I would always say. Yeah, thank you for the question.
We've got time for one more. I can't see. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Oh.
It's 2. Okay.
Oh, should I go?
Yeah, go for
okay.
it.
Thank you. I'm Bokani, and I'm an artist, and I was struck in the clips that we saw today, thank you, by these moments of ecstasy. I've been reading a lot about mystics at the moment and sort of unpacking my Zimbabwean Catholicism and kind of what spiritualities were displaced by that Catholicism. And in these mystic traditions, you have these ecstatic revelations, and maybe spend 30 years afterwards unpacking those revelations. And I kind of think, like, my painting is a static revelation, and then I spend a while coming back and seeing what those revelations say. And I've been thinking about your films as these collective dreaming moments, or like collective prayer. I wondered what your films have revealed back to you, either as reflections from your audiences, or over the years that you've come back to them or seeing them again. What kind of revelations are you being gifted now and for these moments now?
Wow. I mean, I'm sat here next to Julie Dash, so it's pretty. My films are done all right, but yeah.
Well, every film is different, and but I've kind of stuck with that whole dreaming thing, and I've, you know, with the films that I've continued to make about the Gullah Geechee culture, and I learned a lot about. I learned a lot from making Daughters of the Dust, but I also, after that, I wanted to make films, a few films to show people that I'm not always nonlinear, and I can do dramatic films and television episodic films. And so, but I did learn as much from those productions as I possibly did from Daughters of the Dust. Yeah.
And just a quick one. I think you asked who Nana Pazants are. I have to add Matty Diop as well.
Oh.
And I see a lot of similarities with Atlantiques and Daughters of the Dust, actually, because I saw Matty do a talk at the Barbican after Atlantiques came out, and someone had asked us, like, why is the film in Wolof? And she was just like, so fiercely, like, what do you mean? Like, what you know? And I just think it was just so important for me to hear someone with so much conviction as to why it was important to have a language that she probably doesn't even speak that well, you know? Like,
I met her. She came to the HBCU in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, it's just like, you know, there's so much, and similar to what I was going to say to your question is I just think there's so much in the idea of archiving, because I think this idea of, like, in order to look forward, you also have to look back, because there's just so much information from the future and the past, in a way. And I think, I think it's really important. I'm going to reference my assistant Shakti, who's in the room, and encouraging her to reference her family and record her family and reference, because she's like Afro-Mexican. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing, you know? And I think by understanding more about each other, like, we get to understand, like, the similarities of where we come from and, like, sort of where we're going. So yeah, I think to the question of dreaming, I think there's also, like, even if you're not dreaming per se in yourself, you can archive your parents' dreams or your grandparents' dreams, because they definitely have those dreams, and they're more likely to tell you than they are to tell other people. And if those dreams disappear forever, then we will never hear them. But yeah. Did you want to ask a question over there? I know you're shy.
Thanks. Hi. It's been a really insightful conversation. My question was also on spirituality, particularly from a UK perspective. I just wanted to ask, kind of like, how did I put it? How has Black spirituality, like, how does it make itself present to you here in the UK? Because I feel like in the US, from the outside looking in, the US, the Americas, Africa, it feels so potent, but here it can feel really heavy and dead. And I just wonder how it manifests itself to you, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think it happens in different ways, right? And I don't want to go into a long one, but I think that what I've always loved about my brothers and sisters over in the States is that they're very emotive, they're very upfront, and I think that's the prism in which their experience has been. Like, they've always been sort of emotive, whereas, and maybe I'm not the right person to say, but over here there's more of a reservedness, probably. But I would always say, like, I think spirituality is everywhere, because I think if you just need to, again, to someone's question about the music, right? I think you just need to see black people on a dance floor in the UK when, like, garage or grime or put on Next Hype by Temper T, and you'll see how people react in that situation. And I think it's sort of there, but then again, if I speak about the diasporan experience, I would probably say, like, even if it doesn't seem very prevalent, you definitely have, like, praying mothers at home. You definitely have praying aunties at home. And I think maybe it seems, also America's a big country, like there's so much diversity in what it means to be black there. And I think there's equally a lot of diversity in what it means to be black here as well. But I would say that maybe somewhat of it being quite reserved over here, you don't see as much. But I think black people, I think if you're from diaspora, you always see your people as being really creative and carving out whether, so Jen and Kuru, Arthur Jaffa, two people I really love. Jen and Kuru once said to me, there's no hierarchy in where she gets information from. And then you look at Arthur Jaffa's work, and like his like seminal work is like videos from YouTube and the internet and stuff. And then Nana said to me about Ronnie, who came and spoke at Thingy. I found her on TikTok, and she was giving a eulogy about, I think it was like Gabriel Moses and Clint posing in front of the Union Jack on ID magazine or something like that. And I just think there's just such incredible people in different pockets, and that spirit. Maybe religion might be quite like a box to put us in a little bit, but I still think it's spirit. I think ultimately it's spirit, because I even think, like, I'm going on another side quest, but I think the idea of Ifa is not meant to oppress. It's meant to give you a sense of freedom and understanding of who you are, and maybe that is now being channeled into religion, but it's just spirit, it's just spirituality, it's an acceptance of yourself and everything you are, and the elements that make you and stuff like that. And I think that's super prevalent in the UK. I mean, just look at Aaliyah, I don't know where she is, she's bringing people together in these sort of spaces, and I think she's definitely doing some spiritual work, whether she realizes or not, similar to you speaking to us today, just hearing you talk and draw all these dots and connections. And I think it's really, really present, but maybe we here in the UK can do a better job of having these conversations in the open, maybe.
Okay, that brings us to a close. Thank you so much, Akinola Davis Jr., Julie Dash, and Abel and Liam for your support as well.